book is U2 Song by Song. The author is Aaron Sams. Aaron, nice to meet you. What's up?
Nice to meet you. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm looking forward to talking U2, one of my all-time favorite bands. So this I was looking forward to so much. By the way, is it Aaron or I know you go by AJ on social media or what's the proper?
Either one works.
Cool. Cool. All right. So you can't pick a better person to write this book, I don't think. You've been a fan of the band for over 40 years now. Is that true?
It's 40 years last year.
Okay.
Picked up Under a Blood Red Sky back in 1983 and haven't looked back ever since.
You've traveled the world to see them live in Tokyo, Istanbul. This is according to the website that you created, I believe, u2songs.com, right?
Yeah, I've been all over from one end of the world to the other. Nothing to pick out a spot on their tour and go do some tourism while I'm there.
And you keep notes and you have kept notes on those shows or on U2's discography since what, 1989?
I've been keeping notes on the discography specifically since about 88, 89. They're all stashed in the back of a book about Rattle and Hum.
Wow. And that's what led to the website u2songs.com.
Yeah, back in about 95, final class project for a little computer class. We had to pick a topic and create a web page, and the prof said, pick a topic you really enjoy. So U2 floated to the top of the list, and I took my discography notes that I've been working on for years and turned it into a little website.
When did
And
that site launch? What year?
1995,
95. Okay.
5 years before U2 had their own website.
Yeah. So that's right around the time when Pop came out.
Yeah, when Pop came out, I did a little Pop Mart site for most of that tour, following this tour city by city and tracking the set lists and so on. So a little different that year, but went back to the discography and the collecting site shortly thereafter.
How did you become a fan?
Friend of mine was down at his place, and his older sister had Under a Blood Red Sky playing, and I heard 40 at the end of that, and I actually heard the crowd singing along to it. And it was the first live piece of music I can remember hearing.
How
I was
long to sing this song?
exactly. I was a bit of a music fan at that point. I'd been buying cassettes at that time, other artists, but it was the first live recording, and I was hooked when I heard that.
Yeah, I saw them once and only once, 2001, All That You Can't Leave Behind tour, and it's one of the best shows I've ever seen. What is the
Uh,
best show that you've ever seen? How many? Let's start with that. How many U2 shows have you been to?
I've seen somewheres around 100 shows.
Wow. Okay. So I
I
guess it's kind of hard. Is there one or two that you think about when you think best of the best shows I've seen?
Some of them I can't not mention because of the atmosphere. I saw them at the Apollo Theater in New York. That is gonna have to be at the top of the list. I saw them filming the video for the Blackout in Amsterdam. So again, small club. There was maybe 250 people there. So those sorts of night are hard to match. Some of the bigger shows are just as amazing, though. Seeing them at Croke Park in Dublin at
Oh,
home,
wow.
85,000 people standing behind you. It's just goosebumps. Hearing
Wow.
Sunday Bloody Sunday in that atmosphere, it's just incredible.
Have you gone to the recent shows at the Sphere?
I have. I saw 6 shows at the Sphere, 3 in October and 3 in February.
So how are you feeling about that? Because Larry Mullen Jr. is still not on drums, right?
I am a Larry Mullen fan. I go and I watch Larry from the start of a show to the end of a show. I drum along with him. That's my jam when I'm at a show. I really thought I was going to mind the Las Vegas thing because he wasn't there. They had somebody in there that was really good. Wasn't the same on drums, but he did the job and he did it well. And he was fun to watch. He was great with the crowd. He was great with the fans. He went out of their way to say thank you to us every time he spoke. So it was really good that way. So I got over it pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think the only other time U2 played without all the original members was maybe one show where Adam Clayton had some issues with alcohol, and then he didn't show that mid
There,
'90s.
there were a few shows early on. The Edge missed a couple,
Okay.
Larry missed a couple, but that was back in the 70s
Okay.
before anybody even knew them. And then Adam had the issue in Sydney. They were filming those shows in 93. And they did a show in Times Square without Bono. Bruce Springsteen and Chris Martin from Coldplay and Carrie Underwood, I think it was, filled in on vocals.
Okay. I got to have you talk to my older brother because he got a chance to see U2 around 80, 81. It's whenever they played a university here in Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut. Small little venue.
Toad's Place.
It wasn't Toads. It was a college. It was we could look it up. I just remember him telling me that he saw the band. They went out back behind the venue, and he saw them getting into their. It wasn't even like a limo. It was like a van or whatever at the time. And then
Yeah.
they were just starting.
So you said you've seen them once. Would that
Just seen
be
them once.
Hartford?
That was Hartford, yeah, Hartford Civic Center,
That
2001.
that is probably one of my favorite shows that I've
Really?
seen. Yeah, that's the one that was attached to the mall, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I had a great time that night.
Yep.
They were on fire back for that round of shows. They were getting ready to tape the show in Boston a few nights later. So I'd done Albany, Hartford, and then the four in Boston.
Cool.
Incredible run of shows.
So you
You
were
got
at that show too. Yeah, that was
it,
the Boston show. I remember they turned that into a radio special and then a TV and radio special,
and they released it on home video as well.
right? Right?
Yeah.
That was a great tour. Great tour.
Um,
So I'm
you saw a
speaking to
good
the
one.
U2 expert. That is for sure. You know your U2. So yeah, this had to have been a fun book to work on. All the songs, the whole discography.
Uh, it was a bit daunting to fit all that into one book.
I would think so.
I for the book is part of a series. Fonthill has the song by song series, so they go out. Each book is about a different artist. I went out and did a little research and pulled down a couple of books. I think I had looked at Madonna and ABBA. There was one other that I had looked at. And my first thought was, how am I going to fit U2's catalog into something this size? So it was a bit of a challenge.
15 studio albums, right?
15 albums, a lot of singles that I wanted to fit in there, B-sides, a lot
Well,
of ground to cover in their 40-year career.
Well, you did a great job. And what I did was I decided to just kind of pluck out a song or two from each of these albums as we go throughout and get your thoughts on those, what's in the book as well, because there's some great information behind the scenes on how the songs were made or what they're about. So I always find that stuff fascinating. So we'll start with that debut album, which is Boy, is released October 20th, 1980 in Europe. March 3rd, 1981 in the US, produced by Steve Lillywhite, who produced the first three albums. And that cover image, that boy on the cover is Peter Rowan, who is a neighbor of Bono's and the little brother of Bono's good friend. Is it Googie? Pronounced Googie?
Googie.
Googie. Okay. Yeah. So the opening track, I Will Follow. And that's one they still perform live to this day. Didn't chart in the US, but charted in Ireland at 69, Australia at 71, New Zealand at 34. Who is this song about? I Will Follow.
Bono has revealed more recently that he believes the song was written for his mother. His mother had passed when he was in his teens, and in about the last 5 years or so, Bono's revealed that it's kind of a cry to his mother beyond the grave, saying, "I want to follow you to wherever you are."
And didn't he say it was initially a song he wrote as a suicide note?
Yeah, so the Suicide Note was original, his original take on it all. Then he started talking about his mother beyond the grave. So it's kind of him as a young boy wanting to follow his mother to the grave, I guess.
I hadn't listened to this album until I really got into the entire U2 catalog, which was early 2000s. And there's not a bad song on this album. And the 1-2 combination of on-cot dub into the heart is
That's
one that
beautiful,
I love it.
beautiful.
So what is on-cot dub about? It's Gaelic for the black cat.
It's Gaelic for the Black Cat, and it's a song that Bono wrote when he was separated from Ali, and he's claimed it's about temptation and relationships, and perhaps he went out to destroy his own relationship.
They are together still today.
And they got back together after that song came along. So whatever he was up to or whatever he was doing, he came back to it. But that's one of the reasons it's been tied to Into the Heart over the years. Into the Heart was kind of him and Ali coming back together, I think.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite from this album?
Favorite from Boy, Out of Control. It was
Yep.
written on my fifth birthday, and can't go wrong with that. Bono wrote it on his birthday. We share a birthday, so
Oh, that's cool. His 18th birthday, May of 78.
yep.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at here. It says one of the songs that U2 recorded with Shaz de Whaley for their first release, 3.
Yeah, they had a brief contract with CBS Records in Ireland, and CBS sent in one of their A&R guys to record a three-track single with them. So over the long weekend in August 79, they recorded that. So probably right about this point in time.
Out of Control is about waking up on your 18th birthday and realizing that you're 18 years old and that the two most important decisions in your life have nothing to do with you, being born and dying. That's a quote from Bono. Hey, what'd you think of his book, by the way?
I enjoyed his book. I think I enjoyed the book tour a little bit more than the book itself. He did a little tour where he told some stories from the book and sang a few songs and turned it into a little bit of a production. That really helped. I enjoyed the book up until probably the 2000s when he got into some of the AIDS in Africa and a little bit more of the politics and some of that. It left me a little cold. I wasn't as enjoying that side as much. I wanted a little bit more of the rock and roll stories and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, and that's something that he's faced. He admitted that he knows that some of the fans don't prefer that he'd get too politically involved, but that's something that he has a passion for. Um, yeah, it's kind of a divisive topic, I guess. Some I To me, it doesn't matter if the songs are great. I'll go see the concerts, but some people they just don't want to hear any of that in concert.
I don't mind the politics. They've certainly brought it up over the years, and a lot of the songs have it woven into them over the years. But reading about meetings with secretaries of state and prime ministers and presidents leaves you a little cold after a little while. So
Yeah. October released October 12th, 1981, and during the tour in the US, Bono had lost his briefcase holding all his notes and ideas for the new album, caused him to start again developing songs in rehearsal. And this album includes the singles Fire and Gloria, both top 10 in Ireland. Gloria is misleading, right? It's not a love song. What is it actually about?
Gloria is glory to God. Uh, First real hint of them bringing the religion into the picture was with the October album. It's there a little bit on Boy, but October they hit you over the head with it a little bit more. He borrowed some Latin lyrics to try and hide it a little bit in Gloria, but it is more a love song to God than anything else. At the time, three of the members of U2 had hooked up with a religious outfit in Ireland and were. It was an interesting time. I think the band almost broke up. over some of the religion aspects. The band, Larry, Bono, and the Edge were getting more and more religious. Adam was going more and more in a different direction, and it really became a bit of a sticking point for them.
It's interesting because U2 is one of those bands, same lineup from day one for a very long time, but there were a few times, maybe three times during their career where they had thought about calling it quits. I know during the Octoon Baby recording, they felt like things weren't working out. I believe there was another time, right, where they thought maybe we should split up.
Yeah, there's been a couple of times over the years. Um, the October album, Bono covered it during his book tour. He said that they got together and they went to the manager and said, "God is telling us that we should pull the plug on the band." And their manager looked at them and said, "And what is God telling you to do with the contracts you signed?" So they quickly learned that they had contracts that they had to fulfill, and they weren't getting out of it that quickly.
Yeah, and eventually they'd start making the labels quite a bit of money. Didn't start that way though, at least here in the States. Boy in October, solid placings on the charts, right, in Ireland,
Yeah.
but in the US still hadn't caught fire, but that was coming. Boy reached number 63 on Billboard October 104, but that changes with War, released on February 28th, 1983. Peter Rowan once again featured on the cover. And War
War was
was
the big breakthrough for them.
breakthrough, first number one in the UK, knocked Michael Jackson's Thriller off the top spot. Not too shabby. And then in the US, reached number 12.
Just sat outside the top 10.
Yeah. This is thanks to the singles New Year's Day, Sunday Bloody Sunday, Heavy Airplay on radio, and MTV. And
MTV was there around then. You had a bunch of good-looking young guys that were doing videos. They knew what to do to get the songs played. New Year's Day, what a
yeah.
catchy song! It's still one of my favorites.
And I want to ask you about the video because there's some great stories on that. Which, by the way, New Year's Day was the highest charting single at that time, number 53. And we can't forget about Two Hearts Beat as one, too. That's another great song. But New Year's Day, inspired by the solidarity movement in Poland unfolding as U2 was recording the album. And I want to ask you about the video. Where was this filmed? And can you tell the story behind the band members riding on horseback? Or so we thought.
The band wanted something cold and snowy. I guess they were playing into the Poland wintertime theme. So they went to Sweden. They took the band to Sweden. They filmed. I forget the name of the town right now, but a little lakeside resort type area. And they were in the snow. They were cold. They were miserable. They had a little campfire built, but they couldn't stay warm. So the next day they packed up and went home. And apparently the band on horseback is actually a bunch of locals that they hired to film the rest of the video.
Were they teenage girls? Am I wrong?
Teenage girls, yeah, you are correct.
Yeah, what an iconic video. Such a great video. My underdog pick, by the way, Surrender from this album, which I didn't realize was about a trip Bono took New York to New York City. Yeah.
Yeah, it was written about New York. I forget the exact story with Surrender, but something about tossing yourself off a building and maybe a touch of suicide in that one as well.
Yeah. He would
Seemed to be
revisit.
yeah, it seemed to be a topic that Bono came in and out of quite a bit in the early years. Day Without Me also apparently touches on suicide on Boy.
Yeah.
Bono later said it was related to Ian Curtis, but he wrote the song before Ian Curtis from Joy Division had killed himself. So I'm not sure where the original inspiration came from.
Yeah. And then from All That You Can't Leave Behind, Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out of, is Michael
Michael
Hutchence
Hutchins,
about his
yeah.
suicide. Does Bono talk in his book at all about depression? Did he battle depression at all? And
He doesn't seem to discuss it, and I've never heard it brought up, and I don't know that he actually got himself to that point where he considered it, other than what he has spoken about in relation to I Will Follow.
yeah.
But he certainly had friends along the way that had walked down that path.
Yeah. And he would revisit that New York theme with All That You Can't Leave Behind, the song New York.
Yeah, New
Right?
York comes in and out quite a bit in their lyrics. City of Blinding Lights is also has some ties to New York, and being the first band to play New York's Madison Square Garden after 9/11.
Yeah. And that goal of coming to the US, that was big for them. Of course, the Joshua Tree, when you get to that
Yeah, Angel
stage
of
of the tour.
Harlem talks
Right.
about coming to New York for the first time, hearing Billie Holiday on the radio. There's a lot of New York stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the songs on Songs of Innocence tie into New York too, some of those early shows.
Yeah, let's get to the Unforgettable Fire, released October 1st, 1984. Much of it recorded at Slane Castle in Ireland. Have you been?
I have not.
Okay.
I bought tickets to go see them at Slane Castle, and that would have been that 2001 Elevation tour. But my mother had gotten sick, so I decided to stick close to home. And that's a bit of a reoccurring theme, canceling concerts to stick close to home for me.
Yeah. So Slane Castle still on your bucket list then? Hope to
I'll
go
get
there.
there someday.
Yep. Yep.
There's still rumors you two will go back there and play again. So next time they play, I will be going.
There are actually two castles on that album cover. Moydrum Castle near Athlone, which is on the front, and then is it boy, this is a pronunciation. Carrigo-Gonell Castle.
I'm not even going to try that back one.
Carrigo-Gonell Castle. Apologies to those who are listening in Ireland right now. Right near Clarina, and that's on the back. Uh,
That's the back cover, yeah.
yeah. So the album debuted at number one on the UK albums charts, number 12 here in the States on the Billboard 200. Brian Eno brought in to pursue a new direction now. So this, and you can hear it in the production. And they scored their first top 40 single in the US with Pride in the Name of Love, which reached number 33. Most know that this song is about Martin Luther King Jr., but I don't think many know Bono intended it to be about somebody else. This I found interesting. Can you tell us who that was and what led Bono to changing his mind and focusing on MLK Jr. instead?
Bono claims that the song was originally written about Ronald Reagan
Wow.
and the ambivalent attitude in America, meant as the sort of pride that won't back down and that wants to build nuclear arsenals. So originally, the Unforgettable Fire had that tie into the nuclear bomb and the bombing of some of the Japanese cities during World War II. So I, I certainly understand where Bono probably got into the nuclear talks that were ongoing in the 80s, right? Reagan in the forefront of all that. So happily, he switched to a different topic and wrote one of their probably biggest songs. It's one of the songs that they still play live, still gets a huge response. I don't know if they would have gotten that had they stayed with the Ronald Reagan subject matter over the
Yeah,
years.
right. Yeah, he felt like he was giving Ronald Reagan too much importance, and that's why he made that change.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a good change. It was a good switch.
Another song on the Unforgettable Fire called Bad. And this song about the heroin crisis in Dublin, among my favorites. I'm sure many U2 fans feel the same. It's a standout song for U2 because it's the performance of that song at Live Aid in 1985 that pushes U2 into the spotlight, and they become huge stars as a result of it.
If you want a moment where I tipped from casual fan to hardcore fan, it was sitting on my grandmother's couch watching Live Aid when Bono hopped into the audience.
Wow, what a performance.
That moment right there, I was hooked. I had to know more. I wanted to know who these guys were. I had picked up a couple of things from them, but that was the moment where I went from I kind of like them to who are these guys? I need everything they've put out.
Right. I believe there's an interview with Bono at Live Aid, which I thought was funny. He actually introduces himself. You know, he's like, because people, there's a lot of people that may be watching may not know. So he's like, my name is Bono. I'm from the band U2. It's just like insane to think about that because, you know, they just became a household name. And it was
Back then,
really because
back
of
then they
that.
were still working on it.
Yeah.
Actually, they were supposed to play Pride in the Name of Love that night, and
That was to follow Bad, I think, right? They had to cut it
I
out,
think so, but they had to cut it out because of Bono's run down into the audience.
which he felt bad about afterwards.
Yeah, he thought he had screwed the whole thing up, and so many people were sitting at home thinking, "This is great. Who is this guy, and why is he pulling some girl out of the audience?" And that whole thing made my day watching that.
That is what I think one of the things I love about you too is Bono's. It's like a fearlessness on stage. Like he'll do things like that. It just he just goes somewhere and I don't even think he even plans on it most of the time. But
I don't
it's
think sometimes he realizes he's done it until
yeah,
he's told about it after.
yeah. It's like he's in a zone. It's just
I
magical, magical.
I was at the opening of the Elevation tour in Fort Lauderdale, and he just decided he was going into the audience off the tip of the heart and just jumped off and went for a walkabout. And it was crazy to actually see that. You didn't know where he was. Security was trying to figure out where he was going, what he was doing. And he did that for the next night as well. And I managed to put myself right in his path that night and got a high five as he was running by.
Oh,
So
that's so cool, man.
it
Very
was kind of neat.
Springsteen. It reminds me a lot of Springsteen. Springsteen's like that too. Just passionate on
Bono,
stage.
Bono gets that energy built up and he just has to let it go sometimes.
Yeah. And that performance sets up the next album, which is an album called The Joshua Tree. A little old album called The Joshua Tree. This is still my personal favorite. I love Octoon Baby, but this is right at the top for me. Released March 9th, 1987. First album to reach number one in the USA, reached number one in the UK. Record stores opened at midnight to meet demand. With or Without You, and I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. Number one singles, Where the Streets Have No Name, number 13. In God's Country, just missed the top 40, number 44. Eno and Lenoir are back to produce on this. We haven't talked about the Edge's amazing guitar work, so let's talk about With or Without You, because he saves this song from being abandoned.
Yeah, was it Edge or was it Bono's friend Gavin Friday?
Well, let's see, because I think it was that riff.
At one point they talked about walking away from that song.
Right. With or Without You. Let's see.
The breakthrough came when the Edge was given a prototype Infinite
Right,
guitar.
right.
Gavin Friday and Bono took it away to work on it when the band was ready to abandon the song.
Yeah.
It was Gavin that convinced Bono to take it away and work on it a little bit further. But in the meantime, Edge was noodling around with this Infinite guitar. There was only two or three of those guitars created. Um, Canadian came up with that invention, and somewhere along the way, Bono brought back what he had been working on. Edge brought back what he had been working on. They smushed it all together. Out came With or Without You, which I don't think you could go anywhere in 1987 and not hear that song on the radio.
Yeah, another song almost lost, Where the Streets Have No Name. And this time it was engineer Pat McCarthy stepped in to save this one.
Yeah, Brian Eno was getting ready to throw that one into the garbage, and when the engineers rescued it that day and said, "No, no, well, we're going to pull that aside," and the band worked on that and worked on it, and they thought they had something special there, but they couldn't get to the finish line. But eventually, they got there. I'm so glad they did because if there's a moment in their live show that I never want to do without, it's being able to turn around when the lights come up during Where the Streets Have No Name
Oh,
and looking at the faces behind you. It's pure joy in the audience when that song is being performed.
it's goosebumps. Goosebumps. What was the? Did they perform that? Wasn't at the Super Bowl just following nine
Yeah,
11? Yeah.
they did do that at the Super Bowl. Um, Guy behind me at my first show in Edmonton in '97 tapped me on the shoulder and he said, when the lights come on during Streets, look behind you. I have to say, that was the best advice I ever got. I still to this day just look around the arena or the stadium or wherever I happen to be and just look at the audience enjoying that song. It's rare to see that many people that happy all at one time.
Yeah. Joshua Tree. I remember getting it this Christmas vacation week. I was in college and I got a gift certificate to Strawberries Records. And I went and got Tattoo You from the Stones and Joshua Tree. There was a third one, I think, too. But because I kept thinking this would be in the early 90s. I'm like, I keep hearing everything about Joshua Tree. And I know the hits, I know the singles, but I got to hear this whole thing, you know? And it was just one of those moments where you just like mesmerized, you know, just turn the lights down, hit play, and just, yeah, just amazed at what I was hearing. It's
Uh,
the songs that weren't the hits are I love every bit as much as the ones that were.
yeah, the Joshua Tree came out while I was in high school, and small town, maybe 500 people. My graduating class had less than 30 people in it, so no one knew who you two were. There was me and one other girl at the high school that were U2 fans. So we would just talk for hours. And Joshua Tree was one of those albums I got into while it was fresh. I was there while it was coming out. And I think that might have been the first album that I got into while the band were promoting it rather than looking back on something they had released years earlier.
Rattle and Hum is interesting. October 10, 1988, it's released. And it's a combination of new material and live performances. It's released as the soundtrack to the film of the same name. This is kind of divisive. Where do you stand on Rattle and Hum? This differing opinions among you two fans, I think.
I really like the music. I probably could have done without the film. The live performances in the film are amazing, but I don't know. Being in a small town, there wasn't a theater nearby, so I did Rattle and Hum without all the movie fuss. I didn't see Rattle and Hum until probably 2 or 3 years later.
Okay.
So to me, Rattle and Hum was just more live music and some great songs. And I really bypassed the Rattle and Hum film aspect, probably until it showed on TV a couple of years later
Well, there's a great gospel version of I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For.
with the new Voices of Freedom
Yeah.
here out in New York. They were actually approached to do a single of that song. Um, Back when they released the initial single in 1987, U2 was going to do a double release and release a gospel version of the song at the same time.
Well, they had hits off this one too. The Desires #3, Angel of Harlem #14, and a couple more singles. When Love Comes to Town with BB King.
That's
All
such a great song.
great song, and All I Want Is You is among my favorite.
All I Want Is You is one of my faves as well. I love how they ended that.
Yeah, Jimmy Iovine credited as producer, reached #1 in the U.S. and UK. But again, mixed reactions from critics and fans. So I think that's why that was part of the decision that went into Octoon Baby, correct? It was kind of like, let's try something different now. I think we went a little too far in that direction. Let's try something new.
We went a little too far with rock and roll in the US sound. Let's head to Europe.
Yeah, yeah. Which we
Uh,
get to Octoon Baby. Yeah.
Not one of my favorites.
Really? Wow.
It was my first year of university, and I was off listening to strange, weird dance music, and Actung Baby just left me a little bit cold.
That is shocking. That is shocking. Wow. Okay.
Had some great songs.
Yep.
Some of them are favorites of mine. I was really into some of what they did with the singles. There was a remix of Even Better Than the Real Thing that I played constantly. It never came out of the stereo, that Perfecto remix.
So it had
Uh,
its moments, but as a whole,
Mysterious Ways,
yep.
there was a remix of Mysterious Ways that really got my attention as well. And the one single with Satellite of Love and Lady with the Spinning Head, that caught my attention. So there, I was all over Actung Baby. I just never listened to the album.
What about the boot? There was a famous bootleg that got circulated for many years. The songs that were some of the songs that were ditched. Some of the songs had pieces of what we would end up hearing.
Yeah,
Right.
it was stolen from their hotel room is the story. Somebody made one of the cleaning crew made off with the tapes or something.
Now the
Really rough versions of some of what we heard on that final album. But I do admit I do like some of that early stuff. Even better than the real thing was in there in an early form, and Salame, which they released as a B-side eventually, was in there.
were these the songs though where they finally they got, because there was a point there where they were getting frustrated and they kind of gave up and said this isn't going to happen.
Yeah,
Were these the songs?
it was the frustration that got released. It was the
Okay.
frustration that made its way onto bootleg, and you can hear it in some of those songs there. If you go back, there's I think 7 CDs worth of material, and some of it is just the same song over and over and over again. They were beating themselves over the heads with it and not getting anywhere.
They started recording, I think, as early as '89 or so, wasn't it?
Yeah, they had done even some of the footage of Rattle and Hum. They're playing songs for Iovine, some of the stuff they had worked on back during the Rattle and Hum sessions.
Yeah. Then they scrapped it, and then it was, I believe, the song "One."
Yeah.
Was that the first? That was the first moment where they said, "Okay, we're on to something here." Was that
Yeah,
the
that
one?
was the breakthrough. That was the one where they figured it out and they pulled it together, and the band, I don't know if I want to say it was easy for them, but they got there. They were able to pull that song together easier than any of the other material they were working on. And they packed up. They left Germany at that point.
Right.
You always hear about the German roots, but a lot of that album was recorded when they got back home to Dublin.
Yes. Yes. Because it was in Germany that they were getting frustrated.
Yeah, they had the breakthrough moment before they left, but they brought it home to Dublin and finished it off on home turf.
You know what's interesting? The lead single was "The Fly," which I love that song, but it was an interesting choice as a lead single because I would think maybe like "Mysterious Ways" or even better than the real thing would have been a
Yeah,
logical choice.
that took them down that path of some really strange first singles.
Right.
If you think about what they've released over the years, the oddball song is typically the first one out of the gate. Next album was Numb. Um,
Yeah.
Vertigo. Vertigo wasn't the obvious single for that album either, I don't think.
It's kind
And
of a gutsy call. Yeah.
Beautiful Day. Beautiful Day was the obvious song from that.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Discotheque.
Discotheque. Yeah.
There were stronger songs on pop than
Yeah.
disco.
Yeah. Which we're getting close to talking about. Octoon Baby 91 should go into the numbers a little bit here. Debuted at number one in the US, number two in the UK. Recorded with Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno. Lanois acted as the primary producer, working full time with U2, while Eno would join them for a week at a time each month. Mysterious Ways and One are top 10, even better than The Real Thing, and Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses, top 40. And the title of the album, this is fairly well known, was taken from the movie The Producers. The phrase heard in the film was used by sound engineer Joe O'Hurley.
Early, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where they came up with that name. And let's see, you two were hoping to catch some excitement in Germany. We talked about that. Just got some notes here. The studio had been where many of their idols had recorded. That's right. David Bowie recorded at that studio, Iggy
Yeah.
Pop, and the city was going through reunification. But they found the city cold and couldn't find their path in the studio. And that's where, like you say, they head back to Ireland, and on the verge of breaking up. I mean, that's
Yeah,
wow.
that was the second big breakup, I think. They came really close at that point.
Imagine if that happened. I mean, because
That
they
that
became huge in the '90s.
Well, that's just it. Actung Baby, you look back and you can't imagine the 90s without it.
Right.
But we were really close, not even having a U2 anymore at that point.
Yeah. Aaron Sams is the author of the new book, U2, Song by Song, out now through Font Hill Media. So you can find it wherever Books are sold online at Amazon, all the usual places. So U2 is arguably the biggest band in the world by this time, early 90s, and that is evident by the numbers for the next album, which was 93's Zooropa. The album reached number one in 17 countries, including both the UK and the US. And it's got the singles Numb, Lemon, Stay So Far Away, So Close. And the track Numb, that took people by surprise. Who am I listening? That's not Bono. Is that? No, that's not Bono. That is The
It's
Edge. Yeah.
it's the Edge on lead
But Bono was
vocals.
supposed to do the lead vocals. He took a crack at it a few times.
They had a couple of different songs. During Actung Baby, it was developed as Down All the Days. It's actually on one of the box sets. You can hear Bono singing the original planned version of Numb.
Wow.
So it's out there, but it wasn't working. It was one of those songs they were struggling with. And The Edge took it away and came back with this spoken word piece that just worked over top of it, and they ran with it. And interestingly enough, the backing vocals, it's Larry Mullen has a big piece of the backing vocals there. You don't hear his voice in many songs, so it's interesting that it's The Edge and Larry that kind of took that song away and made it their own.
Yeah, I remember hearing that summer of '93. What a choice for a lead single. I mean, I love the title track, the opening track, slow fade in, boom 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 boom, and it's just
I
hypnotic.
I had had a little vacation from U2 at that point. Uh,
Really?
Actung Baby, I hadn't listened to a lot of it. There were a couple of singles that I listened to now and then, but Zooropa hit. And although I was off investigating other music when Actung Baby came around, U2 kind of met up with my investigations and hit me full force with Zooropa. It's exactly what I was listening to. I was listening to a lot of industrial rock. I was kind of in a German place. Nine Inch Nails was on my listening playlist at that point in time, I think, and some German industrial bands, Ministry, a lot of stuff like that. I found U2 just pulled it all around and just went for it. I really love that album. It's still one of my favorite U2 albums.
Yeah, and I think the band as a whole, but definitely Bono and The Edge, they were always on the edge of pop culture musically. Like they even on pop, I remember Bono was talking about just looking at the top 40 charts and seeing who was there, and they wanted to kind of stay ahead of the curve, really, not keep up with the others, but kind of look forward to what's coming next in the 2000s, and that was a pretty gutsy move on their part. But they also Oasis was a huge influence on Bono. I think of
Yeah,
the Edge too.
Brit Rock was having its day in the sun right around then. Oasis was big. You had a lot of acts coming out of Manchester that were starting to hit some success again, and it was just an interesting era. I'm really glad U2 went down that road and played around with it. That 90s U2 stuff, some of my favorite U2 stuff they've done.
Yeah, I had author Jeff Harkness on who wrote a great book. Maybe you've read it. You should if you haven't yet. 40 Foot Lemon, The Complete Story of U2's Pop and Pop Mart. It's an excellent
I,
book.
I have that on my Amazon list. I was
Okay.
looking at it this morning, actually.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure Jeff's listening to this episode. He's a huge U2 fan and he is a fan of pop, as am I, probably like half the tracks I am a fan of. And I think I'm with you. I'm glad that they went with this, that whether it worked or didn't, it's something that they really wanted to do. It was just something artistically they felt they wanted to do. And it was initially announced to be released in October of 96, but it was delayed. They had trouble finishing the song. It's kind of similar to Octoon Baby, right?
yeah, they struggled with pop. They weren't quite sure what they were doing with it in places, and end of the day, they weren't really happy with the final mixes, and they were still tweaking and playing with things. I think U2 were a little bit ahead of their time with pop. I think that album stands up better than any of us remember it. if you go back and listen to it, that is an incredible piece of work.
I remember Bono talking, this is maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, he wanted to re-release it.
I think they had something there that they didn't know at the time how good it was. I'm a big fan of pop and the whole tour, the culture that surrounded it, the merchandise they put out, the fun they were having with the videos. I just love that whole period of U2.
Yeah, talk about pressure too, right? They had the tour booked, ready to start April of '97, so
They were still mixing the
they're
album and they were
still mixing
supposed
it.
to be, yeah, they were supposed to be in rehearsals. The tour really suffered because of it.
Yeah. Well,
They got off on a rough foot in Las Vegas and the critics just savaged them for not being ready.
yeah. But the album debuted strong, number one in 29 countries, including UK and US. Yeah.
Yeah,
And Discotheque, number 10 single, Staring at the Sun, number 26.
yeah, I think their singles, they should have mixed that one up. I think Discotech, maybe they should have released it as a second single and put one of the more U2 sounding songs up front. I think it would have turned around that campaign for them in the States.
And Larry wasn't too fond of the album as a whole, right? He wasn't digging what they
Oh,
were.
Larry had back problems, so Larry
That's right.
was on the sidelines for most of the recording of that album. He came in at the end and re-recorded a bunch of stuff they had put together, but that one was probably a hard one for him because he wasn't around for the bulk of the original recording sessions.
Love Mofo.
Ah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
I
Last
have
Night
a
on Earth.
I have a Mofo t-shirt that I almost wore tonight for this.
Oh, you could have worn it. That would have
I
been
went
cool.
with the Las Vegas one instead.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's from the U2 Vegas show. Okay.
Yeah, that's from the Sphere show.
I was
So
wondering what that was about. Okay. Cool. Well, so there was a reaction that the band uh, had to the lack of, I mean, I hate to say it, it's not a failure of pop because it did really well, but you know where I'm going. I mean, there was some pushback
so,
there. So I think
yeah,
that leads to All That You Can't Leave Behind. Like, okay, let's pull it back a little bit. Let's make sure we don't entirely lose our fan base.
and I think that's what they did. Pop was so out there. They took some risks. They pushed the envelope, but I think they decided, yeah, it didn't really work for us, and let's pull back and let's get it back to four guys in a room again.
Good. It worked two times before, right? Joshua Tree, when they made that shift in sound, did just fine. And Achtung Baby was a drastic change, but
And it worked
it
for them
worked.
again. All That You Can't Leave Behind is probably going to be, in the long term, looked as one of their big three albums.
Yeah. Yeah. Released
If you
October
have to name a
30th,
third, yeah, October 30th, 2000.
2000. Yeah. Yeah. You're saying if you have to pick a third, is this top five U2 in your opinion? All That You Can't Leave Behind?
In my opinion, none of those albums
No,
are in the
I
top
know because
five.
I read about you. Yes, I had. There's an interesting. I think I have
Uh,
it in my notes here. I was going to ask about your favorite U2 albums.
you can ask that one later.
Yeah,
Um, Critically and popularity, I think All That You Leave Behind, or All That You Can't Leave Behind, has to be the third album. Some would make the case that it would be How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb because of the Grammy Awards, but I think uh, All That You Can't Leave Behind is the more successful of the two albums.
yeah, yeah. Reached number one in 32 different countries, including the U.S. and UK. Album won Best Rock Album at the 2002 Grammy Awards. Talk about the lead single, Beautiful Day, number 21 in the US, number one in the UK. A couple interesting things here. It almost didn't make the album, one. And two, there was a different title, which you can hear the Edge singing under Bono's vocals.
Yeah, the song was originally developed under the title Always, which U2 and their infinite wisdom released the same day they released Beautiful Day. That's the B-side to Beautiful Day. They released another version of the song that went on to become a finished song. And you hear hints of Beautiful Day again in Get Out of Your Own Way. Always,
Interesting.
always went on to become the backbone of Get Out of Your Own Way in 2018. So
Interesting.
they really like the ideas in there, and they've spun it off in a couple of different directions over the years.
And we did talk about Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out of, and that was about Bono's friend Michael Hutchence of In Excess sadly took his life, and he was so affected by that. So he wrote the song about him, but also talk about there's an unreleased version recorded with Mick Jagger.
Yeah, Mick Jagger and his daughter, I think it was.
Has this
Uh,
out there at all in any bootleg
it is not,
form?
the studio recording that they did is not out there. Mick Jagger has joined them in concert to do it, and that was done at one of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anniversary celebrations.
Wow.
That's been released, but the actual studio version with Mick Jagger on backing vocals has never come out. One
Wow,
of
that
those things that's in the archives that I hope we get to hear someday.
yeah, because they've released quite a bit of stuff that I would think is from their archives. You know, a lot of those deluxe editions and things like that. You think
Um,
it'd be in there?
yeah, the deluxe edition of All That You Can't Leave Behind was a bit disappointing because there were only three unreleased pieces of music in there, and they were all remixes that just didn't make the cut in 2000.
Well, tell me, is there anywhere I can find? I love on Elevation. I love the version that's on the album, but the one that was for the video had at the end a little heavier, the Edges riff.
Tomb Raider.
It's the Tomb Raider version, and I cannot find that. I don't even think it's on
Uh,
Spotify. I was trying to find it.
it should be released as a single on Friday.
What? Oh, okay. What am I missing?
U2's currently going through a little bit of a program where they're re-releasing old singles,
Oh, cool.
and Elevation should be the one that comes out on Friday. I'm hoping the Tomb Raider version is in there. It wasn't on that big box set they did a couple of
No.
years.
Isn't it awesome? Kicks ass, man. I love that.
Yeah, no, it should be out on Friday though, I would expect. So keep an eye on streaming services then.
Very nice. Good timing. I'm glad I asked. Yeah. Yeah. So
No one knows yet that
no
that's
one
what's
knows. Okay. So this album puts him back in the driver's seat, and then they return with '04's How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. There was something about long album titles they were into.
the that
The record
decade
labels
just
must have
called.
hated it, right? It's like you got to get something a little more catchy, something
I I call it atomic bomb, and I end
right.
it there.
Yeah,
And
debuted number one in 34 different countries.
yeah, if you want to follow up on the success of an album, Atomic Bomb was the way to do it. Grammy Awards and charts and sales, and that Vertigo tour just sold like crazy.
Yeah, now here's another thing I didn't know until I read your book. They started recording with a 20-piece orchestra with a producer by the name of Chris Thomas, but then those were scrapped.
Yeah, Chris Thomas, famous for his work with the Beatles.
Wow. Okay. Again,
Uh,
question: are these songs out there?
they are not out there. Very few of the songs that they worked on with Chris Thomas ever saw the light of day. Um, they did a big box set with Apple on iTunes, the complete U2, and it was like crazy amount of songs, and you could only get it through iTunes, and you could only get the bonus stuff if you bought the whole thing. A couple of the early demos were on there, but not the orchestra stuff. So the orchestra stuff still remains unreleased, and I'm really interested if they're going to pull that out this fall for the 20th anniversary of that album.
Yeah. The question also is: are they fully mixed? Were they done to completion? Do we even know?
No idea where they
Yeah.
got to in some of that. There were other songs that were cut off that album right at the last minute. Um, there's a song that fans go on and talk about all the time, Mercy.
Mercy. Okay.
Mercy. It's only ever been released as a live track, and it was recorded many years later. but there was an original version recorded for Atomic Bomb. It was cut like right before the final mix of the album was done. They decided the album was too long and they hacked the song off the end. Best song they've done in years. I love that song.
Really? Okay, I got to look for that.
Yeah,
Mercy.
there is a studio version of it that leaked, and it's the original studio version because they were passing out copies of the album to let friends listen to, and the albums that they were passing out had Mercy on the end of it, and then they chopped it at the last minute. Stupid move.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, some great pieces of trivia on Vertigo. It had several working titles: Hard Metal Jacket, Full Metal Jacket, Shark Soup. What the hell? And
I
and then I don't even know how to pronounce this correctly. Sopa du Tiburon.
I
Sopa.
believe that's shark soap
That's
soup
okay.
in Spanish.
Oh, I gotcha. Viva
They
la
were really playing
Ramon.
with, yeah, they were playing with the Spanish thing there quite a bit.
Viva la
Viva la
Ramon.
Ramon went on to become the Miracle of Joey Ramone.
Joey Ramone, okay, and Native Son was another title. And they're said to, according to your book, there's said to be over 75 recorded versions of this song. 75.
Steve Lillywhite did a podcast a few years ago, and he said he came in and Bono brought out the song that he just loved, and he looked at Bono and he said, "Are you going to be able to sing that live?" And Bono's like, "No." Well, back to the drawing board.
Yeah, that's in your book too. Wow.
It's interesting. Some of those songs they've teased and played with, and I'd argue that what they play live now is the best version that they've got of that song.
Of Vertigo.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to hear some of those earlier versions.
I think what's interesting from reading the book too is just you just get a feel of this is something I was already pretty much aware of, but it solidified the fact that the work ethic of you two and the perfectionism and the if it's just not right, we're going to start again. They just they're not just going to just okay, we got enough songs, let's just throw a few more tracks on there. Here's your album and let's tour.
I think we'd have a lot more albums if they weren't perfectionists.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they
And
just
and sometimes I wonder if what they had 2 or 3 months before the end of the album sessions isn't the better album sometimes.
mm, yeah. All right, now here's where we get to your favorite U2 albums, and this is shocking. Not as shocking as your statement on Achtung Baby, but this is I'm with you on this one actually, by the way. But according to U2songs.com, you're a big fan of The Unforgettable Fire,
Yep.
Zooropa, and the next album we'll talk about, which is 2009's No Line on the Horizon. I love this album.
I love this album.
Yeah.
There is a joy in the music on this album that uh, I just find gets under my skin. I could listen to this if I was on a desert island and had to pick one album to take with me. It's going to be my remixed version of No Line on the Horizon because I do have a version where I've rearranged it and taken a couple of things out and moved them around. So
Okay.
uh, there
Okay.
are a few choices I make that, but overall, it's my favorite. All the songs end up in there, but I've got a different version of "I'll Go Crazy" that I put on my copy.
What a great song. What a great song. But here we go again. Initial recording with Rick Rubin in 2006. It was shelved.
The only thing that came out of those sessions were "The Saints Are Coming" with Green Day and "Window in the Skies." Both of them were on a best of package that they put out. But there's a whole album of Rubin tracks that they've never gone back to that they keep threatening to go back to.
And what, they just weren't feeling the chemistry with Rick? Just weren't feeling it? Because this is an interesting AC/DC had the same issue with Rick Rubin. When they worked with him, they just didn't
My
feel like it was working.
understanding is Rubin expects you to show up and have songs, and he's going to record them and make them the best damn songs ever. You two walk in with nothing and expect to fiddle around in the studio and get help in creating songs and putting ideas together. Rubin wasn't ready to go that far back in the process with them, from what I understand. So
Hmm.
he wanted them to come a little bit more ready to record, and they showed up with a bunch of sketches, and they were looking for more of a Brian Eno treatment, and they didn't get it.
Yeah, well, they brought him back in. Him and Brian and Daniel Lanois,
Yeah,
producers. Yeah, they came back in.
they not only came in as producers with No Line on the Horizon, they're credited as co-writers on that.
Right. Now, is that a
Um,
first? They hadn't done that before?
they hadn't done that except for Passengers, where Eno and Howie B and Pavarotti get some credit.
Okay.
But that was released under a separate name. It wasn't released under U2. This is the first time they brought somebody in as like songwriters with them.
Get on your boots. Magnificent. One of my all-time favorite U2 songs. And I'll go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight. The three singles.
Yeah,
And this was supposed to be a double album too.
it was. Songs of Ascent was what the second half was turned into, and we still haven't had a release of that.
Yeah. And you talk in the
Summer,
book about the album title, how Bono came up with that title.
No Line on the Horizon, looking
Yeah.
out across the water from his house in Dublin. Uh, couldn't see the difference between sky and water.
No Line on the Horizon. And that album cover, very simple, but so beautiful. I love that. And that's by an artist, I guess a fairly well-known artist, I think, according to your book.
Yeah, he's well known for those seascapes. He actually did one of them in the town that I grew up in. So there's a touch of Sugimoto in Ganesh at home.
Cool. Cool. That's that. What's the name of the artist?
Sugimoto,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, man. It's a great
he's
album. It came at a time where things were starting to change as far as the radio, the way songs were distributed, the way things were promoted. The album did well, but it not like previous U2 albums. And I remember just being surprised by that. They tried like hell to get it out there as much as they could, but it just didn't seem to have.
I I think the record industry went right and U2 went left.
Yeah,
They just didn't quite hit what was getting the attention at that point in time. And they tried hard. They had appearances on the Grammys. They pushed out remixes. They tried to bring that campaign around, but that album got away from them, I think.
yeah, I do remember being at the movie theater and they had I'll Go Crazy If I Don't Go Crazy Tonight on one of the trailers. And I remember thinking, yeah, man, they're working it, getting that music out there because you had to be creative in ways to get it because it used to be just MTV, VH1, get your videos on, get the radio
They,
play, tour.
they loaned that one out to BlackBerry for an ad as
That's
well.
what it was. Maybe that's what they were
Yeah,
playing the BlackBerry ad. Yeah.
and they used that song for a couple of things along the way, but they really tried to get it out there. But I think they stumbled a bit with Get On Your Boots. That wasn't a song that really caught the attention of even U2 fans tend to write it down as
Yeah.
a least favorite song. And I actually kind of like it.
Do you?
And
Yeah.
one of the things that I actually love about the book and going through and looking up all these songs, I had never really figured out what Get On Your Boots was about.
Yeah.
And then I found it was an interview in French. It was in a French magazine, and Bono was talking about being in the south of France. And he went to the fun fair with his wife and his daughter. He took the kids to the fair, and they were there when the jets started flying overhead going into Iraq from the UK. And that's the whole backbone of Get On Your Boots. It was Get On Your Boots, we're going to war, rockets at the fun fair, and the planes going overhead. So it kind of added a layer to that song that I never really got. And I wouldn't have picked up if I hadn't gone rooting around for some odd interview in some French magazine from 97.
Yeah. Another interesting aspect of this album is Moment of Surrender in terms of promotion or in terms of just how that album was heard by a mainstream audience. I remember Rolling Stone had that as like song of the year or something like that. And that song wasn't played on the radio once, which was so,
I,
that just said so much. It was like if Rolling Stone in the past had a U2 song that was like the song of the year, it would have been one of those songs that was all over the place. It was on the radio, it was on television, everywhere. And I thought that was strange too.
Moment of Surrender. I struggled to get into Moment of Surrender, but it was one of those tour stops that was promoting that album. I was in Dublin, and my friend Emma was beside me, and she just closed her eyes when Moment of Surrender started, and I watched the tears start coming down her cheeks. And it was the first time I think I stopped and listened to the song. And it's become an absolute favorite. But it takes me back to that night in Dublin under the stars, listening to that song.
Wow.
And just one of those personal moments.
Well, here's just a quick statement. This is from Wikipedia. Although it was not released as a single, Rolling Stone named Moment of Surrender the best song of 2009.
They also listed it in their top 500 songs of all time list.
Yep, at 160.
Yeah, which is
Once.
impressive for a song that most people have never heard.
Isn't it? Yeah. So let's move on now. Next three albums: 2014 Songs of Innocence, 2017 Songs of Experience, 2023 Songs of Surrender. So the first two comprise of originals, while the last a reworking of previous songs. Now, by the way, I think was Songs of Innocence the one that was forced onto the iPods. That was a big, right?
I'm going to tell my iPod story.
Oh, go ahead. But that's the one, right? Songs of
That's the
Innocence.
one.
Yeah.
It, I'm a bit of a techie guy, so I saw that Apple could force stuff onto your phone. I turned all that off. I made sure Apple wasn't putting anything on my phone. So when you two forced that onto everybody's phone, I couldn't get it. I was in a panic. I spent 3 hours on the phone with Apple's technical support to try and get that album.
You were the reverse because all you ever hear was people pissed off. I don't want this on my phone.
Uh, I was in a panic trying to get that album. I could not get it for the life of me. And it was because I didn't trust Apple. I figured, what are they going to put on my phone? Are they going to download some crap? So I turned it all
The
off and I
biggest
got the
YouTube
reverse.
fan in the world.
Learned my lesson.
Yes. Did you think that was an obnoxious move, or that was all the critics like, oh, come on, don't force me to listen to it? What was your position on that?
I think that, yeah, it was obnoxious what Apple did. Apple shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I don't think you two realize that's what they were going to do. And there's been some interviews since then that have suggested that they thought you were going to have to opt in, which I think would have been the better solution. But it certainly got attention. And now it's the one thing you hear about you two, no matter who's talking about them. It's always that damn album from
Yes.
2015.
Yeah. So now my
Uh,
question for you though, is there a connection between the three albums? Like, is the songs of part of the three titles for a reason? Like, to me, it's here's my limited U2 knowledge assessment of these. Okay, to me, it's a journey through the band's childhood on the first one,
yep.
adulthood on the second, and then on the last, to me, it's a band no longer constantly determined to push forward as much, but embracing their past. Is that how did I do?
I think you're looking at a path. I think there's connecting tissue between what will probably be 5 songs of albums. There's 2 more to come from what I understand.
Oh, that
So
was going to be one of my questions. Yeah, what's
I
next?
don't I don't think we have the full picture yet, but I think Innocence was their early days up until Joshua Tree. I think Experience is looking back when they hit that crazy peak and adulthood, fame, going around Actung Baby, all of that chaos and craziness that followed them, the supermodels, the parties, all of that. I think Surrender, like you said, is looking back and coming to terms with their whole career. Older men kind of looking back at their body of work and
Because
maybe with a bit of maturity.
Yep. because I should mention, I don't think I mentioned it too. They're reworkings of previous songs. Those first two
Are
originals,
fresh. Yeah.
yeah, these are reworkings of previous songs.
And then we don't know the titles of the next two for sure, but Songs of Ascent keeps getting brought in. So, and that's said to be a song of hymns and spiritual songs. So I think that's going to be more a older man looking towards his end.
Okay. Okay. So
I think it's going to be a very different album for you too. I would almost argue that that might actually be them looking to close or cap off their career at some point.
yeah, it sucks to think of that, but hey, we just got the new Steven Tyler. He can't sing anymore, so he said that's it. Aerosmith, they're done, and that's where we're at right now. Where
But
we're
you
at.
two's got a few things before they get to that point.
Yeah,
So
I was
that
gonna ask you how much longer do you think they have? Do you think they can? I mean, we've got people like Springsteen and Bob Dylan who are doing it now into their 70s, up right up through hitting the 80 mark. Stones.
um,
How
there
old are
was an
these guys, by the
interest
way? Late 60 or no? What are they? Early 60s? Mid
mid
60s?
60s,
Okay.
mid 60s. Adam's 65 now, so you're hitting retirement age for most of us. They're getting older. I think Bono will continue on in some shape or form, even after U2 may retire. But I don't know. I think U2 have a couple of good albums left in them and maybe a couple of more tours, and then they'll probably start looking at doing less and less. It's been 7 years now since the last album of new music,
It's been that long. Yeah.
2017.
Time flies. Yeah. Well, you did want to mention too the Atomic City single because that's the very latest that we've gotten from them.
Yeah.
And I forget, is that in the newest? Is that in the book?
It's in the final printed copy of the book. It
Okay.
was a last minute request.
Yes.
I caught wind that they were doing a new single to celebrate the Las Vegas Sphere shows. So asked the publisher if they could make room for one last song. So it's just a brief mention, but the book is complete. It has everything up to date, including Atomic City.
How
So,
nice is that? So, Atomic City, what's it about and what is your opinion of the song?
uh, it's a touch of a love affair with Vegas, a little love letter to them. Um, there's references to Lady Luck and Sinatra and some of that. The atomic side goes back to the atomic bomb testing in the desert outside of Las Vegas. So there's a lot of that. I think it was really done specifically for those shows that they were doing in Las Vegas as a way to promote them and to get it out there. And it was a way to remind people that, hey, even though we're showing up on stage with a temporary drummer, here's Larry Mullen. And the first person we're going to show you on stage with us at Sphere is Larry Mullen in the Atomic City video. So,
And
um,
there's a callback to a Blondie song, "Call Me," right? There's like a post-punk
yeah,
tribute there.
Blondie and Giorgio Moroder
Yeah.
get co-writing credits on this song. It's one of the few times U2 has put a co-writing credit. So
So U2 is alive and well, and we're looking forward to what's coming next. And the book is out now. U2 song by song. It's out through Font Hill Media. You can find it wherever books are sold. And Aaron, where can people find you online if you want to plug the U2 song site as well? It's all
uh,
yours.
we've been working on a little fan site called u2songs.com since 1995. It's probably the oldest continual operated U2 website on the internet these days. So there's a team of about half dozen of us that put in a few hours a week keeping it up. News, shows, uh, big focus on collections and collectibles. So
I love it. So there was a time when people were going to that website and you can hear the modem, like the old dial-up, the old dial-up trying to get to the website. It goes back that
I
far, 95.
Yeah, it's been around longer than you two have had their own website in operation. So
That's awesome. Yeah. And if anywhere people can find you, I know you're on X or Twitter or whatever we call it.
I'm on Twitter. We've got a site account, U2 Songs, and I'm also on there as U2 Wanderer.
Yes, U2
Uh,
Wanderer. Yeah, at U2 Wanderer.
yeah, call back to one of my favorite songs, the one they did with Johnny Cash.
Yeah, we did an excellent job on the book, and I'm so glad we were able to make contact, and I was able to get you on the show because this is U2, man. They're right up there in my top five. So I was,
Nice.
yeah, looking very much forward to this interview. And again, congratulations on a great book.
Thank you for that. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I really tried to put together something that didn't just stick to facts and figures. I wanted a little glimpse into um, where these songs ended up in the world, who has called them favorites, what fans have taken and done with them. So it's a little bit of love affair with the songs.
And
So
I think it's a great series Font Hill Media has. I think it's great as now we go into the future with generations of fans that will discover these bands. It's a great way to just to get an idea of the body of work from these bands, these great artists. Especially as the years go on, they're not going to be around forever.
I went and picked up the ABBA book when I was writing mine just to have a look through it, what they had done. I learned a lot about ABBA that I wouldn't have known otherwise. So I'm
Yeah,
hoping the YouTube book brings a few people into the band that may have missed out on a few things along the way.
yeah, you can read it from start to finish, or you can just, if you're listening to a YouTube song and you're curious about it, you just flip through and find the entry and read about it. That's what I love about these books. It's great. So,
They're great.
yeah, thanks again, Aaron.
Thank you.